Dear students, welcome to CGV class. Today we are going to continue on module 5. These are the things what we are going to discuss today. How to pick an object in a scene, building an interactive model, animating interactive programs, design of interactive programs, and logic operations. Picking is one procedure in the logical input operation which will allow the user to identify the object on the screen. Although the action of picking uses the pointing device, the information that we want to store, it is a position. A pick device is considerably very difficult to implement than any other device on the system. Old display processors were able to achieve this picking by making use of light pen. Each redisplay of the screen would start at a particular time. The light pen will generate an interrupt where the redisplay passed its sensor. By computing the time of the interrupt with the time of the redisplay began, the difference, or we can see the difference and all, we can go for identifying the exact place in the display list, and subsequently we can go for determining which object was being displayed. But one reason for difficulty in recent systems is because of the forward nature of the rendering pipeline. Primitives are defined in an application program and move forward through a sequence of geometric operations, rasterization, and fragment operations on their way to the frame buffer. Although much of this process is reversible, in a mathematical sense, the hardware is not reversible. Hence, converting from a location on the display to the corresponding primitive is not at all a direct calculation. There are some ways how we can go for dealing with this difficulty. One is called as the selection, which is going to involve adjusting the clipping region and the viewport such that we can keep track of which primitives in a small clipping region are rendered into the region near the cursor. These primitives go into the hit list that can be examined later by the user program. OpenGL supports this approach, and now we are going to discuss how this can be done. A simple approach for picking is we can go for the bounding boxes or the extents for objects of whichever we want to pick. The extent of an object is the smallest rectangle aligned with the axis, which is going to contain the object. For two-dimensional applications, it is relatively very easy to determine the rectangle in the screen coordinates, which are going to correspond to the rectangular point in object or world coordinate system. For a three-dimensional application, the bounding box is a right parallelepiped. If the application program maintains a simple data structure to relate objects and the bounding boxes, appropriate picking can be done within the application program. Another way what we can do is we can go for involving two buffers, that is the front buffer and the back buffer. When we are using the double buffering, we use two color buffers. Because the back buffer is not displayed, we can use it for the purpose other than for rendering the scene that we wish to display. Suppose we render our objects into the back buffer, each in a different color. Then the application program will be free to determine objects' contents by simply changing the colors whenever a new object will be defined in the program. The basic idea here is when the user clicks onto the window and we are going for re-rendering the scene, no output will be produced. That means no graphical output will be there. The application program only it will indicate when an object starts and ends. So we can check with the objects which are close to the mouse selection, that is the mouse position. We can go for selecting them. And the application program will interpret which object has to be selected and which object need not be selected. So these are the renderings what we can have in the selection mode. So we can have the GL render, GL select and the GL feedback. And the GL feedback, it is just going for producing the list of the primitives which are will rendered, but no output on the frame buffer. So this aspect we are not going to discuss. The other two we are going to discuss along with some supporting APIs. Programming provides a complex process which is known as a rendering mode, or called the selection mode, to do picking at the cost of an extra rendering each time that we do a pick. A number of steps and functions are required to do picking using the selection mode. We are going to examine each of these steps and then put them together in a simple program. So here we are going to study only the snippets, and you can see in the appendix the complete program for the picking is included. The function GL render mode, it is going to allow us to select any of the three modes. That means we can go for either GL render, GL select, or GL feedback. The GL feedback we are not using here, so let us not discuss about it. So we are going to just discuss about GL render, that is for normal rendering to the color buffer, and the GL select, which is used for the selection mode. The return value from the GL render mode, it can be used to determine the number of primitives that are present in the clipping window. When we enter the selection mode and render a scene, each primitive within the clipping volume, it is going to generate one message called as the hit, that is stored in a buffer called as the name stack. We are going to make use of the function GL select buffer to identify an array for the selection data. So there are four functions which are used for initializing the name stack. That means for pushing and popping the information onto it. And then we are going to manipulate the top entry of the stack. The information that we produce, it is called as the hit list, and when we are going to examine this after rendering, we can see that all the information needed for the picking will be present over here. We are going to make use of a rendering mode called as the selection mode to do the picking at the end of the each extra rendering time, what we are going to do for picking an object. So this is having some multiple functions for support. So in the GL select buffer, this function is used for identifying an array for the selection data. There are other four functions which are supporting this one, which are used for initializing, pushing, popping, and for manipulating the top entry of the stack. So this we have seen in the previously, and we also have one ID here. This ID, it is used for the identifying one particular object by the application programming. So put together, all this information is going to produce a hit list, and it can be examined after rendering to obtain the information what is needed for our picking. Suppose if I define a GLU ortho 2D and GLU push matrix, then any primitive that is coming within this new clipping volume, it is going to generate a hit regardless of wherever the mouse is located. This option will work for the selection, but when we pick, we want to select only those objects that are going to be near the cursor. Suppose we want all the objects that render into the small user-defined rectangle which is centered with the cursor to be selected. Then we have to know the size of the rectangle and how sensitive our picking has to be. So this rectangle will be a small part of the viewport. Given the viewport, the location of the cursor, the size of that rectangle and the clipping window, we can find the new clipping window so that all the objects in the new clipping window will render into the full viewport. So here we can see whether we can select only one part of the object or we want to select the complete part of the object. It all depends upon what your GLU ortho 2D will be there, GLU push matrix will be there, or you are making use of the cursor position. Based on that, you can go for selecting the entire object or going for selecting only part of the object. You can also go for performing the picking by making use of 4 steps that are initiated by a user-defined pick functions in the applications. So first we are going to draw the objects into the back buffer with the picked colors. Second, we are going to position the mouse by making use of the mouse callback functions. And then we are going to make use of a function called as the GL read pixels to find the color at the position in the frame buffer which is corresponding to the mouse position. And at the last, we are going to search a table of colors to find which object is corresponding to the color read. So we must follow this procedure whenever we are going for a normal rendering onto the back buffer. So whenever we are using a GL read pixels, we have to take care of the functions properly so that whatever we are going to pick, that will be selected appropriately. So if we are having a small number of objects, every object can be assigned a unique color, but that may not be possible when we go for a bigger scene. There we have to go for going for a different method. Then we are going to render this to a color buffer other than the front buffer. And then the mouse function and the GL read pixels, it is going to read the color in the buffer, what is at the position of the mouse. Finally, we are going to return the color along with its ID of the object. The OpenGL can do the calculations so that it will determine which window or which clipping window objects have to be selected. So before applying the GL ortho 2D, when we are in the selection mode, the function called GLU pick matrix, it is going to create a projection matrix for picking the objects, and we are going to restrict them only within a W into H area. That means we are having the width by height area, and which is centered x comma y. So this figure over here, it illustrates the process for a two-dimensional application. We can see that the normal window and the image on the display. We can also see the cursor with a small box around it indicating the area in which the primitive is rendered. So whichever primitive is rendered, we are going to call that as a hit. So in the B, in the next two pairs of the picture, you can see that the window and the display after the window has been changed by making use of the GLU pick matrix, how it will appear. So we can see that the world window has been changed so that only those objects that are in the pick rectangle are in the new window, and these objects are now going to occupy the entire viewport. So you can see entire viewport it is occupying. So this is the reason why we do not want this image to appear on the screen. Assuming that we have set up the viewing coordinates for the normal rendering during the initialization or in the reshape callback, the mouse and the display callbacks will be written for this one. GLU pick matrix, it is having the parameters X, Y, W, H and the VP. The X and Y, they are used for the area center where it has to be. W and H are giving the window size with respect to the width and the height, and the VP is about the viewport. So if I'm going to make use of my GLU pick matrix, I can restrict my clipping region to a small area which is around the mouse position. You can see that in the output, just what we have seen, a magnifying glass effect will be applied to the viewport, and then we can go for re-rendering the scene in a selection mode. That means the objects within the clipping region, they are going to generate one hit whenever we are having the object selected in the select buffer. Here we are going to make use of n cross n pixels area rather than a small pixel, because we human beings are not very perfect in the pixel selection and all these things. So we'll have a wider area, that is a n cross n pixels, rather than making use of a small single pixel. Basically, a picking is nothing but where we are going to identify one object. I mean, there will be multiple objects which have been defined on the scene. So what the user has defined, which object we have to select, that will be selected on the display. So here actually it is very simple, because the mouse will give the position. Whenever we are moving the mouse, we know that it will be giving the X and Y position, and we will be able to determine which object a position is corresponding to. But whenever we are going for picking, we have certain constraints also what we have to take care. That is, the pipeline architecture is feed forward. That means it is moving in the forward direction, and after completing one particular stage only we go to the next stage, and we don't have a way to come back and again pre-process it, or it's whatever, the processing cannot be done after we come back. It is only going in a one-way direction. We can't come back from the last display again here. So it is a forward direction architecture. And also, if we are having a 2D scene, and when you go for a 3D scene, it is still more complicated. And then it depends upon the device, it depends upon the mouse, it depends upon the display, it depends upon the software, how close we are going to come to an object to select it. That means if we are able to select an object which is represented even in a very small way, then we have done really well in our programming, or the hardware and the sensors and the mouse and all these things. So these are the constraints what we are going to come across when we go for the picking procedure. For picking, we can make use of three approaches. The first approach is the hit list approach. That means whenever we are going to come across the object what has to be selected, that will be causing a hit, and then we are going to store that one. Or you can also go for having a buffer, and then based on the IDs what you have given to each of the object on the screen, whenever we come across an object, that particular ID has to be stored, and then it has to be rendered. Then the third method is where we can go for a rectangular map approach, and in this case actually it is easy to implement. There are many programs implemented. In the textbook also, in the appendix, you can see one paint program which is implemented by making use of this rectangular map approach. Enter the selection mode and render a scene. Each primitive within the clipping volume is going to generate a message called as the hit, which will be stored in a buffer called as the name stack. The hit buffer is going to contain one record for each hit. That means for every object that is rendered near the mouse cursor, a record will be generated. If there are no names on this hit list, because no primitives were rendered near the mouse cursor, then the value will be equal to 0 in the hit record. Otherwise, we can find three types of information. The first one is the number of names on the name stack when there is a hit. That means the number can be equal to 1. And then we have two integers that is going to give us the minimum and the maximum depth of the hit primitive. Because we are working in 2 dimension, these values will not provide the useful information, because realistic data means it will be always in the 3 dimension. For 3 dimensional applications, we can make use of these values, and then we can go for determining which is the front object and which is the back object that must be picked here. So first we have to initialize, then go for the selection mode, then we are going for rendering with their IDs, and then we have to re-enter the normal render mode by making use of the hits. Finally, we can examine what are the hit records, and the hit records will also be consisting of a number and the depth information in the case of a 3 dimensions. Suppose I want all the objects that are to be rendered into the user-defined rectangle, which will be centered at the cursor. Then the size of the rectangle will be a measure of how sensitive we want our picking to be. So we have to go for designing a rectangle which is a small part of the viewport. Given the viewport, the location of the cursor, the size of the rectangle and the clipping window, we can find a new clipping window such that all the objects in the new clipping window, they are going to render into the full viewport, which is a difficult exercise, and this should be done by one particular API which is called as the GLU pick matrix. This is applied before the GL Ortho 2D when we are in the selection mode. Assuming that we have already set up the viewing condition for the normal rendering during the initialization or in the reshape callback, the display callback will be of the following form, where we are going to have the draw objects. That means the draw object will be going for the GL render. We are going to render all the objects. So we have to call the function that is going to draw the objects directly instead of making use of the glut post redisplay 2 times in the mouse callback, because the glut function will only do one execution of the display callback every time through the event loop. So here we have a simple function that is going to draw two partially overlapping rectangles. So we have here in the draw objects, we have GL rectangle F, we have two rectangles. They are overlapping because you can see the values what are there. It is very close by. So we are going to have the overlapping rectangles. So the rectangle, the new API what we are using here is the GL rectangle F, where we have the 4 parameters, which is going to specify an axis aligned rectangle in a single function. The mouse callback function for this selection mode is given over here. You can see that we are going to have the selection buffer, and the hits is there, which will be keeping the count of the number of hits what is happening on an object. Then we have the viewport, in which we are going to specify the 4 parameters for the viewport, and we also have the GL select buffer, which is going to select the buffer, GL render mode, which is used for selecting the rendering, the init names, it is used for initializing the names, and then the matrix mode for selecting the matrix. Along with this, we are going to create one matrix of size 5 cross 5. That means wherever the cursor is moving around that 5 cross 5, if it finds any object, that object has to be selected. So to do that, we are going to make use of this function here. So by making use of the mouse button. So when the mouse is moving on the screen and when it finds any object in its vicinity, that means around its 5 cross 5 matrix, that object is going to be selected. This is in continuation of the previous function, that is the mouse function. So whenever we want to select an object, we are going to make use of the GL selection mode. And the pop matrix, it is used for restoring the old state. I hope you people remember that the push matrix and the pop matrix are two APIs which are concerned with the system. So whenever we are working in any program, if I want to store all my current state of information, and I'm going to make use of a push matrix, and whenever I want to restore the old variables or old values into my present programming, I can make use of the pop matrix, because in the OpenGL programming it is a state defined software which is going to change whenever the user is going to interfere and going to change it, else it is going to continue on the same state. Then we're going to collect the hits in a variable called as hits in the rendering mode, and then we can go for processing the hits by selecting the number of hits and what is the selection buffer. Finally, we are having the process hit function in which we'll be having the number of hits and the buffer. So for the three-dimensional application, we can make use of these values to determine which is the front object which was picked. These three integers, they are going to be followed by the entries in the name stack. In our example, we are going to find the identifier of the red or the blue rectangle. That means which are being identified by the values 1 or 2. The following function, it is going to print out the information regarding which rectangle has been selected. The picking presents a number of other difficulties for implementers. So when we are doing it hierarchically, we have to see what are the members and which are the set of objects. When the object is indicated by the pointing device, all the objects have to be listed in the set in which the member should be returned to the user program. So graphical APIs, usually they are going to specify how close to an object we must point the object to be identified. One reason for this to eliminate is we can go for multiple ways of picking. That means we can go for a bounding box or we can go for other methods. The select buffer data structure, it is an array of the integer values. The data of all the hits is going to be stored over here, which will be having some depth. So we are going to have the number of the names and what is the depth in this particular data structure. So we are going to have multiple number of values here starting from name 1 to name n. The graphics what I was telling, that is whenever we want to specify how close an object has to be there to the mouse, so we have to identify by making use of several methods. Accurately we can determine which object is present in that particular scene. So there are multiple ways we can go for achieving this, and here we are having some of them. So we can go for a bounding box strategy where we can go for pointing any object present within the bounding box. Another way how we can go for appreciating this is because the human beings are not so accurate with the positioning devices. So when you go for a bounding box, you can have a bigger boundary and within that you can go for selecting. Then also we can make use of tools or menus for selecting one particular region where the object has to be picked. So here when we are using a mouse, it is very easy to look at the mouse position by taking its x and y value, and then we can go for the area of the screen from which I can go for selection mode picking. Now we will consider some of the logic operations. When a program specifies a primitive that is visible, the OpenGL is going to render that by making use of a colored pixels, and these colored pixels are going to be written on a frame buffer. So if I want to go for default operation, these pixels will be simply replaced in the corresponding pixels. If we want to go for a color buffer, then that has to be clear to the black, and then we can go for drawing the colorful pictures. So we can go for either a copy mode or a replacement mode. So it does not matter what color the original pixels will be there, but we are just going to color them with the new colors. That is, replacement is going to happen. Although this mode is very obvious, it is not the only way how we can go for doing this operation. So look at this picture over here where we have the model. We will consider the writing of a single pixel onto the color buffer. The pixel that we want to write is called as the source pixel, and the pixel in the drawing buffer that the source pixel will affect, that is called as the destination pixel. In the copy mode, the source pixel is going to replace the destination pixel. But suppose if when we are implementing, we can see that the destination pixel and its use in the combination with the source pixel, it is going to determine what will be the color of the final pixel. Just now what we have seen, that is called as the replacement mode, and the another mode is called as the exclusive or the XOR mode, in which the corresponding bits in each of the pixel, they are combined by making use of the exclusive or logical operation. If the source and the destination, that is S and the D, they are the corresponding bits in the pixel of the source and the destination, we can denote the new destination bit as D dash, which will be equal to D XOR S, where XOR denotes the XOR, the symbol here, the plus, that is given as the XOR operation, the plus with a circle. So the interesting property about this XOR operation is we can apply it twice. When we apply this twice, it is going to come back to its original state. That means when I'm going X XOR of Y, XOR of X again, I'm going to get my original information. That means it is obvious that whenever I'm going to draw something in the XOR mode, we can go for erasing it by simply drawing it for the second time. So we are having the OpenGL in which will be running in 16 logical modes, and the copy mode is the default one. We can have the GL XOR, GL AND, GL NOT, like this we are having 16 type of logical modes, and the GL copy is the default. If I want to change the modes, I can go for applying the APIs for the GL enable GL color logic operation. Then this particular function will be enabled. And if I want to go to the logical operation mode, then we can go for GL logical operation, and you have to specify which operation you want. If I want XOR, I can give it as GL XOR. If I want OR means I can give GL OR. If I want GL AND, we can go for AND operation. So this is how we can go for specifying the modes. But why XOR we are interested in? Because this XOR is going to create effects. That means when you draw a line, you can erase the line. And this is an interesting application which can go for creating some special effects like rubber banding, and we can draw the lines with the mouse button, and we can erase the lines with the mouse buttons. The XOR operation in the OpenGL is very special. It is part of the 16 logical operations what will be applied bit by bit. That means we can have, that means in logical operations, you know the logical operations. No? In that logical operations, we will be having the 2 bit of information, and then we are going to apply some operations. So out of many possibilities, the OpenGL is going to consider only 16 possible logical operations, and all of them are supported by the OpenGL. But whenever we want to go for enabling them, we should make use of GL enable GL color logic operation, and you can specify what type of operation you want by making use of the GL XOR. Making use of the XOR write mode, we can go for drawing the objects and also go for creating erasable, and also we can go for creating the rubber banding effect. So how this rubber banding effect will be done? Actually, in the textbook, the complete code has been written for the creating the erasable lines, and we can how we can go for creating the rubber band effect. You can please go through that one in the appendix. Complete code has been given. But here only we are going to study in the theory we are going to study only the concept. To know more about this, you can go for the complete program which is available. So the rubber banding effect is, for a line, first you are going to click at one particular endpoint, and then the second endpoint has to be updated. So every time a mouse is moved, the line will be redrawn and it will be erased, and then a new line from the first position will be drawn. So from the first position to the next position, when you shift, there won't be continuity. What will happen? The line will just disappear, and at the second point another line will be drawn. So we can make use of the drawing modes by making use of the XOR values here, and then go for selecting. So this works very nicely for the rectangles, circles and all, and you can see a beautiful effect of the rubber banding. You can go for developing some small programs by making use of this rubber banding effect. So you can look at this picture over here. This is how the rubber banding effect is going to be happening. Suppose we have a window over here, and in this window when I'm going to have my line drawn here. So when you pick one particular place, the first point, and you draw it in the XOR mode, and then you're going to move the mouse to a new position, what will happen? The original line, it is going to be disappearing, and then you have another line from the XOR operation. So you will be having the erasable line. That means the first line will be erased, but the point from where you had started, that means the first point what you had started, that point will be stored, and from there the new point will be selected and a new line will be drawn. So by making use of the XOR operation, you can do some similar operations like this. Because the XOR mode, when you're working, when you apply the operation twice, you can see that you will get back the original information, and that property is made use of in this particular operation here in the rubber banding. In the OpenGL programming, we can go for working either in the immediate mode or in the retained mode. So once an object is rendered, if there is no memory of it and there is no redisplay, then we must execute the code again and again, and that is called as the immediate mode. So this can be very slow if the objects are complex and must be sent over the network. The another mode how we can go for displaying the object is called as the retain mode. So in some form we are going to store them and then we are going to display them. So the difference between the immediate and the retained is, in the immediate we can go for displaying immediately, then and there itself, no storage, no overhead. But when you go for the retained mode, there by making use of some other data structures or display list, or by using an extra memory, we should go for retaining some information for the later on use. That type of a mode is called as a retain mode. So this will be there in every OpenGL program, and for every output you can go for a immediate mode or you can go for a retained mode. Up till now, what all programs we have studied, they are very static. That means there won't be any movement, just a picture will be there. But we can also go for a interactive program. We can also go for a animation, where we can go for placing the object on the display, and then the object also will be changing. It can be changed with respect to the rotation on the axis or along the z direction. Okay, rotation or the changes can happen, movement will be there. Suppose I want to create a picture in which one of the objects are changing or moving, so these images have to be changing. For example, if I'm having some animated character which has to be walking, then we can go for moving the viewer. So we can just go for designing a simple program here, which is for rotating a square. So this rotating square, we know that every point will be consisting of two values, that is the x value and the y value. X is equal to cos theta and y is equal to sin theta. Say we are having one point. I can get there four reflections, is it not? So we are going to have one square, and this square is lying on a unit circle. The theta is invariable here. The theta can be of any value. So the 3 points, that is minus sin theta, cos theta, minus cos theta minus sin theta minus cos theta, they are also going to be lying on the same circle. So 4 points what are there? They are going to make up a circle. And these 4 points, they are going to be lying at equal distances from each other. And they will also be present on the circumference of the circle. You can see in this following slide. So the 4 points what are there? They are present on a square, and this square what is there? It is also part of the circle. The points on the square, the vertices, that is also part of the circle. And the points can be got because they are at the equal distance and at the opposite of each other at the 90 degrees, we can get their values. So if I'm going to connect all the points to form a square, you can see that the square is going to be centered at the origin whose sides are equal to root 2. So when we are going to assume that theta is a global variable, we can display the square by making use of this display function. So in the display function, you can see that we are making use of the GL vertex for creating the vertices, and the theta is for the angle what it has to make, and I'm going to make use of the GL polygon because it is a four-sided object. We can use other geometric primitive also for creating the square. It can be a quad, it can be a quad strip, anything you can make use of. So that by making use of those four sides, I am going to get one animated picture. So this display function, it is going to work for all the values of the theta. And we can display the rotated cube by simply re-executing this display function by making use of the glut post redisplay. So multiple times when I go for display, that becomes the glut post redisplay. You can also go for increasing the value of the theta, which will be increasing it in its value over here. Then our main function what is there, that has to be a little changed, and then the theta should be slowly varied. Now when I am going to increase the value of the theta by a fixed amount, that means the theta will be first some value 0 say, then I am going to go for 1 2 3 like this, and after 360 again I can come back to 1. So for this you can go for writing one function in the idle function. Why idle function means the idle function will be executed whenever the processor is not executing any other important task. It is not compulsion that you have to write in an idle function only. You can have any other function also. Here in the idle function, what you have to do is you have to go for changing the angle theta in small variations, and then you can see how the square will be rotating. To make it even more interesting, you can also go for including a mouse function. The mouse function can be included and it can be attached either the left button or the middle button, or if you want to rotate in one direction you include one button. If you want to rotate in the opposite direction, then you include another button. So this can be done in the animations, and you can use your imaginations and your subject knowledge so to make it even more interesting. So this is one small example what is given in the textbook so that you people will understand how you can go for creating a animation of the objects. Idle function. The theta is varied slowly with respect to 2 degrees. If you increase it more means the animation will be very fast. Slowly you have to go for increasing. So you know that the rotation can't go beyond 360 degrees. So when it becomes 360 degrees, again you have to reduce that to from 0 to 360 degrees. That is why you have to make use of the idle function. So in the double buffering, whenever we are having any display, we make use of two buffers. Why we are talking about the double buffering here means we should make use of a double buffering whenever we go for animation. And there are some drawbacks in the system hardware. That is, the screen image has to be refreshed frequently, and if my frame buffer is not going very fast, then what will happen? The image will not be clearly seen. There will be some flickering effect and the images won't be drawn correctly. The solution for this in terms of the software is you can go for designing a double buffer. That means you can have two buffers, one front buffer and one the back buffer, one for drawing and one for displaying. And these two will be swapped time and again, and then you're going to get an effect of movement. That is called as the double buffering. In the OpenGL programming, whenever you are using a double buffering, the changes has to be done at two places. That means one API that the glut swap buffer should be compulsorily used, and in the main, in the glut init display mode, you should use a constant that is glut double. Then it will imply to the glut system that we are making use of a double buffering. In this program, there is an animation, and that is why this particular APIs have been included. So these are the APIs what I was talking about. The glut init display, in which I'm going to specify the property of the glut double, and then glut swap buffer. It is used for having two buffers and swapping them. So this one we are studying with respect to the function what we have just studied. That means the animations. Whenever using an animation, we need to have all these variables. Okay students, that's all for today. We are going to continue in the next class. Thank you.